Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. Today we're going to do a code review session, pair programming type thing with my friend Felipe. Felipe, before you get started, do you want to just really briefly share the tool that you've been working on?
Okay, so I've been working on a couple Ruby gems inspired by the Python data pipeline libraries. And it's a gem for handling API requests. So you could easily build a class that runs through an API, extracting all data from a period you want, and another gem to analyze the data using mostly SQL with some ERB templating.
Yeah, and I was really interested in your tool because I have a couple consulting clients who have ongoing needs to deal with somewhat messy, ill-structured data, and your tool looked like a nice way potentially to take that messy data and work with it more easily. Um, so why don't you go ahead and share your screen? And if you like Felipe, you can maybe give us a little bit more of an in-depth demo like you did for me the other day. Um,
Awesome.
and then we can talk about maybe how to start adding some tests.
Great. So, well, I think it's best just to start with a fast demo.
Hmm.
I'm going to use the same placeholder API because it's fast. It's already built in like to the generators.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go into my Rails folder and start a new Rails project, meetup, and set it to PostgreSQL. And then I'm gonna include both my Ruby gems, which are open source on GitHub, but still unpublished because I don't have a good name for them yet to list on Ruby gems, and I will gladly accept suggestions if Jason or any of the other participants have ideas. Not really good at naming, like especially gems, things that will have like a public maybe like presence.
Hmm. Sorry,
So
Felipe, can you do me a
let's
quick
go
favor,
into
just for the sake of the YouTube video? Can you make that terminal window a little bit bigger and then increase the font? Yeah, there we go. Great. That's perfect.
sure. Yeah, we're gonna jump into code now, so I'll do that there as well.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Let's increase. That's a bit too much. I think this is good, right?
Looks good to me.
Awesome. So I'm gonna add the couple of gems. So the first gem is called, and it's the one that performs the API requests. So it's in my GitHub, Felipe de Mesquita /extractor. And not sure if this name is available, but DBT certainly isn't, and is also a trademark from the Python people that created the original DBT data build tool thing. And I
Okay.
already add Blazor, which is an awesome gem by Andrew Kane that allows us to easily run SQL queries on the database that Active Record is connected to with no additional setup. So I'll bundle this. And while that runs, this is the example API we're going to use for the demo. It's unfortunately a bit too simplistic, but I think you get the hang of it. So it has a posts endpoint, and you access with posts/ID. So let me get just the beginning of this JSON file. So each post has a user ID, an ID, a title, and a body, and they are all Lorem Ipsum. And you can go through them like 62, and you get another post from a different user. And the last one is the 100th post. And after that, you just get an empty JSON object. So We'll start by, let me just first generate the model for the requests. So we save all requests, the whole thing, all the request options in the response with the headers and everything to the Postgres database. So we can always like do historical analysis, and SSD space is kind of cheap. So it's usually not a problem. So I'm gonna create the generator for the requests model and migration. And I'll also generate the Blazor installer, which creates the config file and a couple other tables it uses to run. And now we're all set up with DB create and a DB migrate.
Felipe, what does the Rails G extractor requests part do?
So it's creating the requests model and the requests migration. So the extractor gem expects a model in the database to save the request body, headers, options, and it's this table. It has 3 JSONB columns, and it also has a cache. If in some cases this is not built into the gem yet, but I can use it as a request cache. So if I'm dealing with an API that has like thousands of records and is slow, when developing an integration to it, I could like hash the request URL and headers and options and check if I already have it in the database. But we're not going to get into all of this. So this generation should be called extractor install, but currently that's the name. It creates this migration and this model, which has a couple niceties to like manually insert a request, but we're also not going to use any of that for now. The important part is that it creates the migration, so we have a requests table in our database.
Okay.
So now that everything is set up, if we start a server and go to a browser, we can go to localhost, see the Rails boot screen, and then /Blazor. Oh, we got a query. Safari has an amazing way to know exactly the path you don't want. Oh, I'm missing the routes. So mount, especially with local things like Safari is amazing at figuring out where you don't want to go.
Place to take you.
Yeah. Okay. There. Okay. So we now can run queries. This is the Blazor interface. If we had like a users model, we could just run select star from users. Currently, we only have like the requests table and no rows in it. So we'll get started by creating a tap, which is a term I'm borrowing from the Python library that inspired this. So we're going to create the example tap. So that's another generator in my gem, Rails G extractor tap. And I'm going to name it example. So it's going to create a SQL file and a Ruby file. So example tap. And here, let me just get this file. What we need to do is get, it implements the stream method. So it's a method that actually returns a request. And tfels, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, is the HTTP library that I like. It's fast. It allows for like a huge number of concurrent requests when I need something like with lots of items. But I think this could like maybe easily be work with whatever HTTP library people want. Currently, it's built it expects a tfills request. So we have a get request for the pagination or ID. Currently, we're going to go by ID. And we need to define a method that tells the gem how it should know that we've downloaded all pages or all items. And also a method that tells it how to know that it got like a valid data that we want to store. So we normally don't store errors in the database to simplify or analytical steps later. So here, just calling integer and asserting that the JSON that I got has an ID key, and it's something that can be converted to an integer. So integer, if you haven't used it before, it's a Ruby method like the integer paren that raises an exception if it can't reliably convert it to an integer. So if we try converting 44a using 2i, it gets us 44. And if we try converting Felipe, it gets us 0, which is not really what I want in that scenario, since 0 could be a valid value. So if
seems like it's insulting
integer,
you.
Yeah, yeah, actually, worthless. So if we call this with 44a, we get an argument error, which is more in line with what I expect. I don't expect a non-integer ID from this API. So this is executed by my gem inside a block. So inside a block with a rescue. So it's fine if it blows up. So this is the tap. It will run through the requests as I showed in Safari earlier. And that's gonna get us all the 100 pages. And once it tries to download page 101, it's gonna notice that the body is just like an empty JSON object. So it's gonna stop and conclude inserting all these raw requests into our Postgres database. And then we're gonna use SQL to get to a nice model that we could analyze. So from a Rails console, I have this class, this example tap class. And currently how we run it, it's by initiating an instance and calling its perform method. Oh, this is so stupid. I forgot to include the HTTP library in the gems dependencies. So there it goes. Okay. Okay, so now we're calling perform, and we can see the requests. If I scroll up here a bit, we can see that it's making a request to JSON placeholder /4, and the next request it makes, it's to /5 and 6, 7, and it's running through them. How it knows to iterate through this sequence is because unless you define how the first value and the following values are calculated, it will start with a value of 1, and then it will call a next value method to update the current value, which defaults to +1. So we could re-implement those methods, and this cycle here, it's more messy than it should be, but the idea is that each request you perform, you validate the response you got. If you got a valid response, you save it to the database and check if you reached the end. So some APIs, you know that you're done on a valid request. So it returns data, but says that there are no more pages, for example. And some you validate, so you got no, in our case, like an ID for the post. And but it also says that you've reached the end, and that's how it knows to stop. Else it goes through a retry cycle with a max retries that you could also override in your class, in your tap. So now that we've got the data, we're gonna take a look from the Blazor query and gonna see 10 requests. So it has the class that downloaded the data, the URL, all the request options, and the data. So you can see between here is the response body in the JSONB column that we saw in the migration earlier. And so this is the request for the post with ID 1, and here is the one for the ID 2, but this is not very friendly yet. So that's where the second gem from my tool comes in. It's called DBT. It shouldn't. That's a trademark from the people that created the Python version. I'll sort that out before publishing to Ruby Gems. So this allows us to, let me go into our SQL folder here, and I'll just replace with the example. We're going to use this syntax, this arrow syntax, to dig through JSON columns in Postgres. And we're going to format this in a way to only get things where the extractor class is example tab. And if you can see a bit of weird ideas here, it's a SQL file with ERB templating. And this just returns the request. Currently, source doesn't do much, but it's from the Python implementation, and I decided to keep it just so we know which tables are source tables and which ones are built. So if we run this by calling dbt run, we get this new example table. Where is it? Felipe DBT example. So now the data is a bit more, it's a bit more cleaned. So we have a column for the body, which would be easier to parse. So we could do body and title. Oh, there. So we got 10 titles. If I remove this limit, we have the 100 titles. So this to use this information, like if we had the title and the user ID, it would get in Postgres at least that you can't use information from the selects in the wheres and the rest of the query. It would get annoying, and you'd have to like constantly be remembering to name all these columns and probably analyze it using with tb1 as something and then selecting from there. So the idea that Python people that created the DBT had is that you could do all this through SQL. So we can have they call it a model, which in the context of a Rails app is not really ideal, but I'm sticking to it for now for compatibility with the Python nomenclature. But let's get the example model.sql built, and it's going to select from currently just example. So if I save this and run it, we now have a table that contains example model, a nice like thing that could be used by a BI system with the ID, the user ID, the title, and the body. And if we remove this, we have like the 100 rows with all the posts from the ID 1 to the ID 100. And another nice thing about this setup is that currently, if we run our example tab again, it's going to go through downloading all like updated versions of those posts. And if we look here, we have 120, 102, 103, 125 rows. And so there's duplication, like we have the post with the ID 6 twice here. But since we're saving the entire request, and in our step we select a column that we call unique by, which should be like what identifies the object of our extraction and further analysis, we could just use like this query from the README exactly. Example deduplicated .sql. So this query will order by unique by and create that and use Postgres distinct on. So we'll end up with just the most recent version for each unique key that we're selecting from the previous table. So from this, we can, instead of building our model from the previous table, which has currently twice duplication of each post. Now it has 200 rows. We can just build our model from the example deduplicated table. And if I do a dbt run, it's interesting. It's gonna drop the views, currently views, not tables, that we've modified and recreate them. So for example, model is now selecting from there. So we have 100 rows and just the most recently downloaded version of each post. So
All right, so I'm going to pause you there, Felipe. I didn't understand all the details that got us from point A to point B, but what I did see today and what I saw the other day when you showed me this is we started with like that raw JSON data, and then by just making a couple changes, taking a couple small actions, we got this. I think it's a view.
This,
or is this a view as opposed to a table?
It is a view, but having it be a table is as simple as including this ERB snippet, build as, and passing it either a symbol or a symbol square table.
Yeah, I mean, all I was going to say is so that now we started with that JSON, and then we got this nice view that we could query, and it has the JSON data all parsed out, and it's really easy to work with. It just looks really nice.
Yeah. And at some points it gets heavy to do all this in SQL. Like if it was a view, it could get slow. So using build as table will instruct on your next run. So here you can see create view, Felipe DBT example model as, and the query. So if you run again, it's now creating a table. It has some extra build step things, like that's not really important, but the thing is now it's built as a table. It dropped the view with the same name, created a table, and filled it in with the same data. So if you run here, there's no difference, but it's a bit faster.
Okay. Yeah. So
the code.
Let's see if we can figure out how to write some tests for this thing.
Okay, which of the, so there's DBT and extractor. Do you have like an intuition of extractor is more messy, but is not creating relations directly in a Postgres database, and DBT has this like unusual thing it does?
Yeah, I don't know. Is there one of the two that would, is there one of the two that you feel like you'd benefit more from having tests for it?
Oh, probably extractor for now. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe let's see that one then.
It has the code that is in needing refactorings the most.
Okay.
Okay, so extractor, it has, besides the generations, it does one weird thing that is just, oh, this is tangential, but it implements a .json method that uses an inline rescue. I should just rescue JSON parse errors here, but it returns JSON or new if it can't parse the body, which is nice, but not central to it. So let's go to the tab class, which is the main class, and it's really ugly. It supports all sorts of weirdness. So you could use this. Let's say you want to just update post with ID 6, 30, and 9. You could pass it an array and it would know just to like do those. So we got 9 and it got 30 and it got 6. So it supports all sorts of weirdness and it has like this terrible code smell of checking if things are like parameter is a array. And the main loop
Whoa.
is this while loop. Yeah, it's terrifying. But I think we could it's this while loop and it asserts that it got a tfills response and it checks from like the tap class if the retry count is greater 10 and it exponentially backs off, so 2 to the power of how many retries it's done. And so I think it's kind of like a Gilded Rose kata to write a test for. I think we could just like not even attempt to understand it and just try and like I'm not sure what the ideal size of the thing we're testing should be, but just like trying get an example tap and see if it attempts the correct requests.
All right, well, let's get started. The first thing I would suggest is, well, you don't have any tests right now, right?
No.
Yeah, let's just get one running test.
Okay,
and we can go from there.
So good. So let me get another VS Code window and open the gem itself. Let's see if there is any bullshit that I forgot in the Git window before start. Okay, let's discard whatever all this was. Because it's gonna my files. Okay, so we got a clean slate with the extractor gem. So there isn't like you use this class through inheritance, right? So currently in our application, the example tap extractors example tap inherits from this class and works a bit like a Rails controller. So you define methods and it calls those methods.
Okay.
Do you want to start writing a test directly at the gem? Do you want to write maybe a test on this Rails application that already has a working instance?
Let's start on the gem.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously we're going to have to install a test framework.
You want to go with TLDR for simplicity or mini tests, or I'm not really good with RSpec, but I can do my best.
I will leave that to your preference. If you have a preference.
So I usually go with TLDR. I like it.
Okay.
The Aaron Series 1, but for this case, if you're going to be mocking API calls, it's going to be hard to record them later if we have a 1.8 second limit. So let's go with mini tests.
Okay.
Oh, development dependency, go pilot one star spec, mini tests. That's fine. Okay, and now we have a test folder. We have mini tests. What's your suggestion for our first test file?
Well, actually, just in case we screw up right out of the gate, I might suggest making a commit right here after we have Minitest installed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if you might want to start a new branch to do all this testing stuff on too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get a new branch. Meetup. There we go. And should we add a gem file for this to work, or will it work with? Yeah, it should have a gem file that requires the gem spec, right?
Should have a gem file that requires the gem spec. I don't know. I don't know how writing gems works.
So require the gem spec. Wow,
Hmm.
this is way slower than I thought. Hmm.
Well, at least it gave you a really useful response.
Yeah, it did. Let me just do a simpler, like this will work, so we can get like a single test running. And sure, the prepared way works. So now we can have like a test file dot rb, and we can require mini test and define a class test that inherits from a mini test that insert true, and an auto run, mini test auto run ruby test slash test.rb. Okay, it passes. Now we can require the actual gem.
Oh, did you do a commit after you added Minitest?
No, let me just, so to get that working, I actually, it's as a development dependency in the gem spec, but it also needed the gem. So the gem file and the gem file lock. So now we have a add Minitest commit, and sure. Okay, so now that we're on a new branch with a commit after we added Minitest, and we have this change that is our test stupid test file for now.
Okay.
Let's see if this required works. It does not. Let's change it to a required relative and see if we can get lib slash extractor. Yeah. User for
What if you try just /extractor? Oh wait, you're in the test folder. Do /lib/extractor.
I think is the, yeah, so /lib/extractor. Great. Okay, so now we have this model. Wow, I wrote this a long time ago. It's using Zyberg because that seemed like hotness at the time. So, all right, so we can subclass it and generate like the sample example tap we were generating before.
I'm confused though. Extractor was like empty.
It's using Zyberg, so it's requiring the tap class and the other class automatically.
Okay, I think
this,
what I
yeah,
would suggest, I think what I would suggest first is just a test for initializing an instance of tap, and that's all.
Okay, So let's try, instead of searching through, extractor tap.new. And holy, I use so much bullshit on this. Like it's using within different access at some point and not properly requiring active support. So I only use this inside Rails applications. So
Oh, interesting.
let's add a fix this require and require active support /all so we can get this working. So much to clean up. It's not going to be enough. It's going to hash within different access actually works. Oh, there. Okay, fine. So
Oh wait,
we
do you
got
want
it.
to
We
do
have
you
a
want to
new.
include that in here? Do you want to include that in the application code?
So this would actually have to go in the gem spec for the gem to work. Let's for now leave it on the main class. Yeah, that's better. But this gem spec needs to be, it depends on active record. Maybe active record depends on, yeah, probably active record initializes enough of active support, though I never got that error. But for now, I think here it's fine. I suppose the test will still pass. It does. I can later like get better at designing a gem. But for now, we can create a new instance.
Okay.
But for us to run anything, we would need to subclass it.
Yeah, I'm
So
confused though. Okay, can you go back to your extractor class?
mm-hmm. Oh, the example type or the whole in
That
the
one.
gem.
Yep. In the gem. Yeah,
So the
okay.
tap class or the extractor module.
The one we're on right now is what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this require active support all, but
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like you were thinking maybe the fact that active record or whatever it was included in the gem spec that that took care of the same dependency when it's actually used in a Rails app. And so this active support all thing would be like redundant.
It should probably, I'm not sure like how, I should look into how Rails, it's not the gem, the Rails, the thing Rails engines are. It's Rails extensions, Rails. There's a name for like a gem that is designed to extend a Rails application.
Okay.
And they probably require Rails in some way here. And
Mm-hmm.
so, since I wasn't writing any tests and I only used this in the context of a Rails application, at some point, for dumb reasons, I was using a hash within different access by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in this test environment, that class was not present. In a Rails application, it would always be like that's like in the context of a Rails application, it's always there. And so probably this should be some sort of like require Rails, I think. No, maybe the dependencies here, but this is more of like a gem structuring thing, like, and it shouldn't even depend actually. Like it should not depend on hash within different access.
Yeah, how about instead of adding that
It's
thing
not.
just to quickly fix the test, how about let's fix the real thing and get rid of the hash with indifferent access?
Interesting. Let's check where I'm using this. Is it not here? So in the tab class, let's see if I'm directly. Let's standard do this do its thing. So it's gonna be terrified
Ha-
standard of what we're gonna give it. Okay, so now let me see if I'm in the yeah, auth uses within different accesses. I think this is the only place. How do I move? Oh, this one thing moved easily. Okay, so this probably isn't needed, and it's just like a weird thing that I was trying to make, so you could like use it without knowing if it was getting a symbols or strings for like account ID,
okay.
but it's usually a symbol. I think that is the only place I was using it. Let's try to remove this require here and rerun the test. Oh, wait, I rerun standard. I was like, wait, those are not errors I was expecting. Yeah, there. Awesome. So that's an easy win with
Okay, so I missed it.
thanks.
What exactly did you remove?
Just like a call to dot, like a dot with indifferent access from the tap class. It had this line number 10. So it was calling one of its parameters and getting a version with indifferent access unnecessarily. I just thought it was cool. It was new to the whole Rails thing then.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
And okay, so now we actually fixed something, and it
Awesome.
should not depend on support. Cool, cool. This was nice.
All right. And now seems like a good time for commit.
Sure. So yeah, so I ran standard, so it changed
Oh, how
a lot.
about let's not
Yeah.
mix the standard changes
Mhm.
with the
Yeah.
hash with indifferent
Hmm.
access
Yeah.
change.
I'll do that. So I'm gonna get to the tab and put the thing back. And now I'm just gonna run a commit with standard RB fix. And now that all of this is committed to the meetup branch, let's publish it. And now we have the actual fix, which was removing, let's see what Copilot gives me.
Mhm.
Probably some refactor code for performance bullshit. Let me see.
What?
Wow, this is incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
So removing unnecessary dependency on hash with indifferent access. Okay, good. So where do you want to go from here? If
Well,
we could get to the point where we make a request from the tests.
right now our test is called test test, which is obviously
It
not
is.
what we're gonna ultimately want to go
Uh-huh.
with. How about let's give it a
Okay.
better name? Maybe we could just call it
So
tap test.
mhm. Tap tests defines tap tests, and I don't need to fix the.
Yeah.
All right. So this is
That's like an
test
initialization test. Oh yeah.
test initialization. Oh damn, Copilot. Initialization.
Oh, close.
Uh,
Um, You don't want the second A.
Initialization.
Oh, no. There you
Initialization.
go.
I think that, yeah. Okay, so oh no, such file, yeah, it has a different name now. It's called tab
Mhm.
test. Okay, so this runs.
Wonderful. All right, let's commit it.
Let's get another
Yeah, another useless suggestion.
another yeah,
Yeah, that's not what we did.
completely useless. Like this is running on GPT-2 or something. I'm always surprised by how bad this is. Rename tests to tab test. Okay,
Okay, great.
so
Now let's see what we can do. Let's go back to extractor.rb.
yeah, that file is not really helpful.
Oh yeah, sorry. Tap.rb. We might as well
Okay.
just close that tab entirely. In fact, can you do me a favor and close all the tabs except tap test and tap.rb?
Done.
Thank you. Okay. So let's try to write a meaningful test if we can. So we got all this stuff. I'm trying to think like
Yeah,
what,
there.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'm not sure. Like your view on a bit more like black box approach to testing, but this seems like almost designed to make it difficult to understand by looking at the codes.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we have a lot of room for improvement.
Sure,
Um,
we sure do.
okay, so how about this? When I'm trying to, yep, thanks, Sanji. Talk to you later. Um, okay, when I'm trying to test something like this, I usually go from the inside out. Like I start with I start with the innermost thing and I go outward. So like, let's go down to the bottom.
So, um,
Yeah, okay, let's go up to that method there. I didn't catch what it's called, but it's big long method.
big long method, the last one,
The one that's inside the
it's
class.
the the one that's inside the
Oh, sorry.
class.
The one the
This
one
one,
yeah, there we
perform.
go. Perform. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. So
Okay,
this is one
so
of those chicken egg situations where we don't want to we're like afraid to modify anything before we add tests, but we can't add tests because of the structure of the code. Um, but here's a question. Do you think it's safe enough to, for example, take the entire body of the perform method and move it somewhere else?
sure, it's just an instance method, and
Well, maybe
so
not though.
how
Maybe,
do I?
sorry, maybe that's too risky. There's all these instance variables. Okay, can you take me to the bottom of the perform method?
Okay, so this whole thing is a terrifying while loop that is going to
Mhm.
implement the flowchart of checking if the response is valid, saving it, retrying it, and checking if we've reached the end. And by
Mhm.
reaching the end or blowing through our max retry limit, we break out of this while loop, and then we print a completed run of self.class.
Okay,
So this is how it ends.
how about this? Lines 89 through 96. Let's focus on that for a second. What does
So
that
these two
do?
lines.
Oh, so no. From 89
Oh,
to
sorry,
96.
89 to 96. So 89 is this line and 9 is 6. So this case.
Oh, I
So
see.
this is the moment, yeah, this is the moment when we've reached or max retry count. So this is a case statement
Yeah,
that
I think
is
I understand what it's
reached.
doing. All right, I think there's maybe not enough moving parts
Mhm.
there to make it interesting. Um,
Sure.
okay, I'm looking at this other part now, starting on line 64. If response valid, last response. Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
I'm so sorry. This is the worst piece of tests that I've ever written. But I hope it's valuable for even if people watch the recording later. Like they might, this might make them feel empowered to add tests, admiring your bravery going through this code. Their code is gonna be like easier, hopefully.
No, you don't need to apologize. In fact, I should be thanking you because I'm, you know, it's hard to find like pieces of, no offense, pieces of shitty code that I can work with to try to add tests to. And so this is a great example for me to work with so I can demonstrate these skills to people, or demonstrate these yeah,
Awesome.
demonstrate the skills so people can learn the skill themselves. And it's not
Awesome.
easy. Um and so we're gonna struggle a bit. But that's okay. Okay, if response valid. See, the tricky thing is we have these entangled dependencies. Everywhere we have an instance variable, that's an entangled dependency because
Yes.
we can't move that somewhere else because we need those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, let's go up a little bit more even. Okay, well, current value dot present, original response equals blah blah blah. Hmm, request for method name. What is that?
Oh, this, wow.
Yeah,
So I was drinking way too much of the like Rails Kool-Aid and being a novice Ruby developer. So what I realized is sometimes, as I've given with this example, when you have like an array of values, your API might allow you to download, say, 20 values at a time, like say 20 pages or 20 products. So with a bit of terrible meta programming, I managed to get working so you could define requests for 20 values
I
and
see.
pass in an array of 1,000 values, and it would slice it in groups of 20 and perform it correctly. So this is not a very good idea and a really weird API for this capability. It's funny, I hope, but and it works. But that's why this request for method could be named something else. So in this case, it's going to slice the array that it got on the initialize method. So I'm not sure where oh, so yeah, request for method
Hmm,
name. So I
I
go through
see.
all the methods that the user defined, and I get one that starts with request for,
I
and
see.
then I parse how many.
Okay. So is this feature being used anywhere?
Uh, Probably there are like many taps written with this, but they definitely, I don't think this should be supported. Like maybe the array slicing facility, like a convenient, easy way to say here are 1,000 items and you can download them in batches of 20. But I don't think the API for that should be the name of the method.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm trying to get at is do we need to preserve this feature exactly as it is? Because if we change it, it would break
We
something?
do,
We do
yeah.
need to preserve it?
We don't need to preserve it
Okay.
exactly as it is because it won't be a lot of trouble to update the places. Like it's used only within my own company currently.
Right.
So, um, like, I like by myself, I could like just go through all those places and fix this if we come up with a better API for this, or I could even like
Mhm.
slice the array myself.
Okay, coming back to the original question, request for method name. Oh, request for method name. I
Yes,
see.
yes.
I see. Okay. Okay, because the request for method name might simply be request for, or it might be like request for 20 whatever. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, now can you take me back down to that perform method where that, yeah, request for method name. I see. Okay. Hmm. All right, current value. So current value is what exactly?
So it starts with either a user defined first value or one,
Okay.
unless we're doing all this weirdness of supporting the array option. So as I've shown here, if the first positional argument for the initialize method is an array, so then uh, the first value, it's going to be the first element of the array, and it's going to, so either the first value is one or one of the array elements, and it increments by checking. This is incredibly messy. Wow. So, but that what that this is what that does. Like current value is set by either one of the array values or one, and it increments by one.
Okay. So this first value, like this line 28, first value or one, is that like an index?
Um,
Is it like a counter?
I think it's actually the number one. So this is where when we run this tap, the first request it makes is for JSON placeholder slash one. So
Oh, I
usually
see.
when so this is usually pagination when we're working with APIs like to download like say orders from an e-commerce storefront. Usually you would start with page one and your sorting options and go through until you get an empty page.
Okay. So is it a page number?
Probably like in our case here, it was the ID of the post. It just conveniently goes from 1 to 100. So usually when extracting data from even things that are not exactly APIs like web scraping, usually you have some sort of counter, like from the results page or from um, anything you're like listing usually does not fit on a single request. So you have to like add an offset or a page number or something that increments in a simple and predictable way. So what this probably is trying to be is like a sequencer class thing that would define how like this is the responsibility of defining the list of requests we need to make, and then we iterate through like say offset. So you download 50 products, you get 50 products, and on the next request you need to send in the query string offset 50, so you get the next 50 products, and then
Okay.
offset 100, So that's currently does all those things.
Okay,
Um,
I understand that a little bit better now. I understand it well enough to know that I don't want to deal with it right now. So let's turn our
mhm.
attention to next value. This looks like something that maybe we can work with. Um, so if current value is an
I think so.
array, parameter minus equals current value. Okay, so I understand the current value stuff, I think, but what is parameter?
So this is the first positional argument to the initialize method. It's got this amazing name, but so it's gonna be
Oh, it's just called parameter because we
so
don't know what it is yet.
yes.
Okay. Okay,
So
how about this?
but
I have an
it's
idea for our first test we can write. Um,
awesome.
okay, so here's my first suggestion. Let's take next value and instead of using instance variables for everything, let's pass in current value parameter and request for batch size and use all
Mhm.
those as local variables.
Okay, so we currently don't have a way to run this. But, so current value and parameter and request for batch size. Okay,
Yeah.
so this feature, this could be omitted. Like this should be somewhere else. But well, if you want to keep everything working the same, it makes sense.
Yeah, I want to
Okay,
make
so
the
now,
uh-huh.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I want to make the least risky change as possible. So I want to mess with it as little as possible. Yeah, so now let's just take all the at signs off of those variables in the body of the method.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I
Yeah.
think we called this method, yeah, two times. So I think one in initialize and one after we are done with a request, and
Okay.
it's we have not reached the end. So those are the two places we call it. Should I go ahead and pass in the
Yeah.
variables?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if Copilot gets it. It does.
Good job,
All right.
Copilot. You're right for once.
Yeah, the commit message thing is like really. Oh, there's actually the two times or sure. Okay, so I think this code should work perfectly. If you want a quick way to test it, I could change the Rails applications gem file to use this version, but I'm not sure which way you want to go about testing this because we don't have a way
Yeah.
to like. Do you want to see if it still works in the app? I could also define a class here that inherits from extractor tap and
Well, I think it would be a good idea for you to manually test it, but maybe that can be an exercise for you after the call, just so we can continue to focus on writing this test.
sure. So where do I go now?
Let's write a test for the next value method.
Cool. All right. So do you have a test next value?
Sure, we'll probably change it later, but we can at least start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we could do like tap equals extractor tap dot new. Okay. And then I would actually just run that because
Oh, yeah.
I like to like change one line and run it, change one line, run it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it's so early that it seems dumb.
It makes sense. Okay, sure.
Okay.
We got it. I think this suggested line is correct. Do you wanna try it?
Oh, weird. Okay, sure.
Right. So, ah, so we have those probably should be named parameters, not positional. This kind of makes that point.
Yeah.
But for now, we have a current value of 1 and a batch size of 1. And I already forgot what the third thing was. Oh, the parameter that was possibly an array. So those two are only used on this weird array edge case that probably should be more separated through some better object-oriented code. But currently, in this case, parameter would actually be new. So it's
Okay.
the case where we are just doing this. So it's just calling perform. Parameter is new, so it's not an array,
Mm-hmm.
and we get the current value of 1, batch size of 1. So we end up in this branch where we are doing current value plus 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about let's change those to
Nice.
keyword arguments?
Current value and
I don't think we
going
have
to
to
the
set any
table.
defaults yet.
Yeah. Okay, am I doing this wrong? Oh, no space. Okay. So now let's hope Copilot makes this quicker.
Haha.
There. Oh,
Wonderful.
perimeter not.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
Okay.
Okay.
It passes.
All right. And don't forget to update the places where next value is called. So those use keyword arguments also.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think this will be. Oh, I already have it. So.
Maybe if you start, yeah. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. So, and there. Okay, on param. All right. Good. Awesome. We have an actual test.
All right.
I'm impressed.
And just out of complete paranoia, if you run this test again, it still passes.
It does.
All right. How about let's commit that?
Okay, let's get a humorous suggestion of what we've done. Ah,
Wow.
sure.
Good
Wow.
job, Copilot.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So let's make our test a little bit more meaningful. If you go to the test code, yeah, it's like we have this, but what does it mean? It's like when the current value is 1, and we might just want to add this as a comment, I suppose, but like when the current value is 1, and okay,
Yeah,
does the
nothing actually. So when the current value is 1, nothing else. Oh, this is a working tree thing.
or yeah,
So
I
when
guess
the
we should just
current
say
value.
when parameter is nil, current
Yeah,
value gets incremented by 1.
perfect. Yeah. So a comment above the test, inside the test. How do you
Yeah, I don't
or
know.
sure. Okay, so when current value.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry, when parameter is nil, right?
yeah, when technically is not an array, but
Oh,
this
okay.
test is testing the new case.
No, let's
When
if that's
parameter
what matters, let's say that.
is not an array, first value gets incremented, not should be called. That's
And isn't it current value, not first value?
It's current value. Yeah.
And I think
That's
it's
the increment.
significant to say that it gets, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I think we want to signify, okay, so the request for batch size, does that affect the outcome or could that have been just anything at all?
Yeah, it could have been anything at all in this case because it would only affect the outcome of next value if we were in this array mode where we are going through the items in the array. So that's when batch size would make a difference.
Could request for batch size even just be nil?
Yes, I think so. I think it's not being it's on the other branch of the if yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think that makes it more clear that that value that we had before, if we had put one, then we might think that one matters, but now it's clear that, or it's clearer that the only thing that really matters for this test is current value.
Yeah, this is better. You want to go with like arbitrary like 47, 48 or something to make it more.
Sure.
Oh, 147. My
Why
typo made it even more arbitrary.
not?
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, still pass.
Okay. Yeah, and then maybe we could rename this method. So it's not just that we're testing next value, it's that we're specifically testing when the parameter is not an array. So we could say like test next value parameter not array or something like that. Oh, there we go. Sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. And then once again, out of complete paranoia, the test still passes.
It does.
Wonderful. Let's commit it.
Oh, yeah. This is like when it gives up like completely.
Yeah.
Explain. Explain test. Explain next value. Test with and better name. Okay,
Okay, I want to do one more and then it's probably time to wrap it up for the day. Um,
sure.
how about let's do one where the parameter is an array?
All right. This is an interesting edge case. Maybe, yeah, the copilot is close. So when the parameter is an array, the next, yeah, this is, let's see what it comes up with. Um, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 with a batch size of 3, and hmm, this might this might even run. Oh, I haven't saved the test yet. It does not. We got an empty array. Let's see why. Current value request for batch size 3. Mm, so why do we get an empty array in this case? Is actually the parameter is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the current value is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's done. Like it has ran through all of them. So let's say in this case we would need to do this, but yeah. So let me get a simpler test, say with less, so a batch size of 2, and our current value is 1 and 2, so we've done the first request, and so we expect 3 and 4 to be downloaded in our next batch, and that works. So what we're testing here is that in the array case, if we're passing to the initialize the array 1, 2, 3, 4, we only call next value upon like successful extraction, successful requests of the previous value.
Wait, I don't
So
want
if
you to
we are
explain it to
at,
me. I don't want you
okay,
to explain it to me. I want you to change the test so that you don't have to explain it to me.
all right. So there is a comment which is not very helpful.
Well,
When the,
I have a suggestion. So I can kind of infer what happens because I see the current value is 1, 2. The parameter is 1, 2, 3, 4. The batch size is 2. So I can kind of infer that, okay, it grabs chunks of 2 apparently. The first chunk is 1, 2.
Mhm,
And then that second chunk out of
mhm,
1, 2, 3, 4 is 3, 4. So that makes sense to me, but I have to do a little bit too much work in order to figure that out. So is there a way that we could spell that out more explicitly so not so much mental burden is placed on the reader?
mhm,
Maybe we could say like
mhm,
maybe the first thing we could put is something about the 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, okay, let's do something first. This won't be very good, but we can improve it later. How about let's say parameter equals 1, 2, 3, 4. Like after line 18, we can do
mhm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
Do you prefer, nah, perimeter?
Okay. Yeah, and then, request for batch size is a little bit confusing to me because, I read it at first as request for batch size, implying to me that it's a request.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
really it's
I
not a
understand.
request, it's a batch size. So maybe below parameter we could just say batch size equals 2.
We could also, yeah, and we could also rename it to batch size because now we have like a test of its functionality. It's not running the whole thing yet, but
That's
um,
true.
okay, there. Eventually, it should be renamed to batch size, which is a way better name.
Okay, yeah, and then we could do current value equals 1, 2.
Mhm. Value equals 1 and 2.
Hmm. Maybe on line 21 there, maybe current value should actually say current batch value. Because these are batches, right?
Mhm. Yes. Current batch, maybe without the value.
Okay,
Value is pretty meaningless, I
that's
think.
true.
Yes.
I mean, all variables have values, it's kind of implied.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay, and then we could say like expected next batch equals 3, 4.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, and that thing on line 19 that we're currently calling parameter, what is it really?
Well, so it's the whole thing we want to go through a brief thing that is either not here nor there, but it could be passed to Neil as the first positional argument, but that would make this thing more confusing for now. So yeah, it's a bit weird because there are a few conceptually different things that work the same in the code. So they could be pages, it could be IDs, it could be, yeah, mostly pages and IDs, but pages, you usually wouldn't use an array, but you might when you want to like update just a couple pages for some reason. It's convenient once you wrap your head around all the quirkiness of this gem. You might like, I want to just download the 2 most recent pages and you pass 1 and 2 through it, and it does just those without having to go all the way to the end and that weird while loop. So maybe we could say that those are pages or IDs, and just like have an explaining name for this in this test.
Well, what is like the, if we say it's pages, that's like an expression of what each individual thing is, but I'm looking for an expression of what the entire collection is. Could it be just,
yeah, so
could it be just content or payload or something like that?
this, like, what this defines is what we're looking to get out of our requests. So this, using this array, we would be able to generate the requests that would give us what I think might be named payload.
I see.
Because so payload might be conflicting in this context.
Yeah, that might not make sense. Okay, well, I don't know what it should be called. Maybe let's just leave it for parameter now. I bet that as we get deeper into everything, we'll have a better idea later.
We could just go with like items to be extracted or something.
Sure, okay. Items to be extracted. Great.
It still requires some explanation or like more thought than it should by the reader of our test, but at least it gives a hint.
Yeah. And you know what? Can you do me one last favor? After line 18, let's add a blank line, and then let's add a blank line before the assert also. And that'll make that setup chunk visually distinct. So we can say, okay, here's the item speed extracted, here's the batch size, here's the current batch and the expected next batch. I think it's pretty easy to put 2 and 2 together and understand what everything is all about from that. Okay, we do have to wrap up now.
Good.
I want to say for our viewers on YouTube, this kind of stuff that we've been doing today is exactly what I do for consulting. It's one of the things I do for consulting. And so if you have some untested code, dear viewer, that you want to add tests to, or if you have some tests that are maybe not so meaningful and you want to refactor your tests so that they can be easier to understand, that kind of thing, just any kind of help with testing. That's the kind of work I do for consulting. And so you can reach me at jason@codewithjason.com, or you can just go to codewithjason.com. You can get in touch with me and we can do this kind of work together. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, Felipe, I would be very happy to do any number of these with you at no charge, just like we did today. Because this actually helps me a lot because it helps me showcase what I do for consulting and maybe helps me get more consulting clients. So I'm up for as many of these as you want to do. So you have my scheduling link, Felipe. You can line up as
Yeah.
many of these meetings as you want to, and I'm happy to do a bunch of those.
Awesome. So am I. This been great, and I think a perfect start to eventually getting this into like a manageable, known, safe state, so I can improve the code. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Awesome. All right. Well, I will talk to you later.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Best luck.